What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. Hey, mailbag time. You guys know the drill. At John Middlekauff, little Instagram account. Fire in those DMs. Get your question answered here on the podcast. We will start with Jacoby. Question for the bag. With Pierce saying there could be a quarterback change, it got me thinking. Would the Raiders trade Davante for J.J. McCarthy straight up? Davante has shown multiple times he doesn't seem happy in Vegas. With Sam balling, it just got me wondering. Well, I would imagine the Raiders would gladly take J.J. McCarthy. I think that's an immediate no from the Vikings. One, they don't need a wide receiver. They gave Justin Jefferson the biggest contract in the history of the league, non-quarterback. I think maybe Bosa's a little higher, guaranteed. Maybe not. I have to relook at those numbers. But obviously, they just gave him an astronomical amount of money. They have Jordan Addison. They had another wide receiver, 83, making some plays. They don't need him. And despite Sam balling, which is a problem for them in terms of are they just going to let him walk, they would not do that deal. And the reality is J.J. McCarthy's out for the year, so he doesn't really do you any good. I do think two guys, though, that are trade candidates, like Davante, if this team is going to be bad, and what's crazy is that comeback win against the Ravens was pretty impressive, but I think that's a little more outlier than it is what we're going to see now. Max Crosby's banged up. Davante has no value on that team. He still can play. Could you trade him, for like a second and a third round pick? I think you'd have to entertain that. Obviously, Crosby's untouchable, but I think Davante, you'd have to think about it. And to me, the other guy, and I understand they gave him a little more money before the season. Maybe they give him an extension or rework his contract, added a bunch of guaranteed money. Tua on a team, like I think Dolphins are a 4-win team. Not Tua, but Tyreek. You could easily get a first-round pick for Tyreek Hill. Should we just start over? Should we just press the eject button? Because that's what I'd do if I was the Dolphins. I'm not remotely close when healthy to winning playoff games. Now, I don't think they do that. I'm not speaking. I don't know the cap implications, which are obviously, not ideal when you give guys a large amount of guaranteed money. But those two guys don't make sense on the team at this point in time. With the quarterback play in Miami, assuming Tua, who knows if he comes back, and Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, like, give me a break. Yeah, listen, I'm not a Raider hater. Gardner Minshew made no sense on the Raiders. He makes sense as a backup. He does not make sense as someone that you go into the season week one. This guy's our starter. Out on you. Is Jaxson Dart a sleeper number one? He's having a season that's going under the radar. I think part of it is Ole Miss hasn't played anybody yet. I have not watched a snap of Ole Miss, partly because their opponents are a joke. When they play the real teams, he's got a lot of money in the line. I mean, when they're playing Bama, when they're playing Georgia, when they're playing Tennessee, I don't have their schedule in front of me, but Bama, Georgia is this week, so that's an incredible game. Let's see. Let me pull you guys up really quick. Rankings, Ole Miss. So you guys have played Furman, MTSU. I don't want to click on it. Wake Forest and Georgia Southern. You've won 76-0, 52-3, 40-6, and 52-13. So listen, schedule's a joke. Dominated everybody. Then you go Kentucky, South Carolina. So you should be 6-0. I don't even know if you're an Ole Miss fan. Then it gets interesting. At LSU, Oklahoma, at Arkansas, who's sneaky not bad. They easily could have beat Oklahoma State. Their running back number 22 is a really good player. You don't play Tennessee, but you do play Georgia. I think there's a very decent chance that Ole Miss, let's just give them an L to Georgia, goes 11-1. So that means they could be in the SEC championship game, play Georgia again, Tennessee, or play someone else again, and be in the playoffs. So yes, 100% Jaxson Dart could be the number 1 overall pick. Clearly, the best players in college football right now are not quarterbacks. In terms of like just the best pure players are Travis Henry, who is remarkable. I mean, he had a sweet open field tackle. He had the game-winning fumble forced. He's a great player on offense. Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan, who got banged up in that game, had another pick 6. He's elite. I think Tennessee has a defensive lineman who's elite. The quarterbacks are Shador, who has a lot of NFL attributes. It's hard to judge him in that offense because Pat Shurmur. I mean, it's so funny. The discourse on Deion, because of course the media gets mad when you rip the media, and Deion's constantly going back and forth. Like, to me, I don't care at all about that. I don't pay any attention. I refuse to even comment. I don't even give a shit. You'd have to pay me to give a shit, and even then I wouldn't care. But to me, the thing to be critical on Deion is like, and what I mean is like banning the reporter, saying the reporters are jealous of the players getting paid. Like, I'm sorry, I think there's some merit to that. I'm not saying he's 100% accurate with that, but I texted with a scouting buddy the other day, or was talking to him on the phone. And I was like, what does a player parking lot at these Power 5 schools look like right now? He's like, bro, it looks like the NFL. I mean, these guys, you know what the average, reporter dude working at a newspaper makes? He makes nothing. So I don't think he's totally off base. Now, Deion brings a lot on himself. But the thing no one's ever critical on him is like, you hired Pat Shurmur to be your OC. Like there's substance behind that criticism. Wait, you went into a season with a quarterback who might go in the top 5, who's your son, and Travis Hunter, who more than likely is the most talented player you'll ever coach, and you name Pat Shurmur as your OC? Deion, I'm pretty sure you don't drink or do drugs. Like, what were you on when you made that decision? But no, everyone's so consumed with, like, he's so big to the media. I got news for you. No one cares. Got a question for the mailbag. I think one of the most underrated storylines right now is Davante. And I wanted to get your thoughts on the situation. Do you think he was sold a bill of goods by his hometown Raiders, with Jimmy G at the same time a promising roster? Or is he also to blame for making the move to a doomed franchise? He's one of the great wide receiver talents of his generation, but he obviously is unhappy in Las Vegas, and it seems like anyone could have foretold the situation. How do you think it relates to other top talents and their evaluation of landing spots when it's time to move on from their current team? I think it's a good lesson. I think for most athletes and most high-level people in business, the longer you do something, the easier it is to be unemotional about it. Because when you make emotional decisions, it's when I think you make bad decisions. It's why family businesses can have their challenges, because there's money involved and there's emotional, situations involved with brothers, sisters, parents, whatever. That's why it gets complicated. And I think Davante, one, he is really, really good friends with Derek Carr. And he wanted to play with Derek Carr, which I don't totally blame him. He's like, Derek's thrown 25, 30 touchdowns. Like, we can have success. And he grew up a Raiders fan. And I'm pretty sure, it was hard for certain family members to come to Green Bay games. I think he has older grandparents that couldn't make it to games, so it was a lot easier. His family was Raider fans. And they obviously paid him a ton of money, which was very lucrative. No state income tax in Vegas. Like, it's been lucrative to him. But it's been a little Randy Moss for the Raiders 20 years ago. Like, kind of forces you into relevancy, which is crazy because think how many wide receivers are, shining. And he was a superstar with Aaron. And I think if he could listen, I don't think he'd change his decision, but I think anyone that wasn't emotionally tied to the situation would have told him this isn't a good idea. And I think looking back, like, let's face it, the Raiders weren't in position to make that trade. I mean, they were because they had the assets to trade for him, but it didn't make sense. There were so many players away. It's just one of those bad deals for everyone involved. Even though the Raiders get to sell more jerseys, Davante gets to make a lot more money, but it felt like everyone lost, and it's sad. I like Davante a lot. I don't know him personally, but I'm close with his mentor slash, longtime offseason coach who's now in New Orleans, coaching wide receivers, Keith Williams. I obviously knew all those people at Fresno State when he came. Like, he's just a high level cat. And I think he made an emotional decision because there were elements outside of business that were there. Like, I think a lot of teams would have been willing to pay him a lot of money, but he only wanted to go to the Raiders. And the Raiders were willing to trade for him, and kind of the rest is history. And it's just sad because he should be playing for big time game, in big time games. It would be fun to see him on the Steelers, the Chiefs, some of the Bills, like some of these really good teams right now. Lifelong Packer fan. It feels like LaFleur gets left out of the conversation when talking about the best coaches in the league. I think the list goes Andy, McVay, Kyle, LaFleur. Why do you think he gets left out of the conversation? Colin and I talked about this the other day. I think that first year he was overshadowed or the first couple years, Rodgers. I mean, that just happens. Rodgers wins MVPs. Aaron gets all the credit, and Matt didn't get that much, even though I remember when he got the award, he thanked Matt. And in a weird way, he didn't get enough credit for last year with Jordan Love. But I just threw on the highlights before I press record, like a 12-minute YouTube package that the NFL puts out. It's crazy how good he had Malik Willis looking, but also the stuff he was running, some quick hitters, motion guys, get him in the flat, Malik hitting him in stride, having Malik run around. Malik Willis looked like the Colts want Anthony Richardson to look like. Think about that. One guy was had for a 7th round pick 3 weeks ago. The other guy went 4th in the draft. I love touchdowns. Tutties, taking it to the house, in for 6. I call them tugs. Whenever you call a touchdown, one thing's for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams or defense, we do not care how they score them. We want to bet on touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something as simple like picking a player to score a touchdown or how many touchdowns will be in a game. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Ready to do a touchdown dance on your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN, J-O-H-N. That's code JOHN. New customers get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. First of all, enjoy the show. Thank you, Blake. I appreciate that. Big Vikings fan. And have been thinking about the game against the Falcons later in the year that me and some buddies might go to. That'll be fun. And if you think Flores will have Cousins' number, having practiced against him, or if Kirk will be able to succeed against his scheme. With the way we're playing right now, I personally think it will be a long day for Cousins without a clean pocket. If the pocket is not clean, Cousins could be playing Georgia or Alabama. He is going to make mistakes. So fooling Cousins, if you're not hitting him, is not the end of the world for Kirk. So the scheme stuff, moving guys back and forth, he can manage that. It's about getting him off the spot and making a move in the moment he has to move that he has problems. I know this. If I was a Vikings fan sitting here today, it's like, wait, we got a quarterback who looks better than the other guy for $10 million, and the other guy wanted $40 to $45 million. And we also drafted a player who looks pretty promising. I'd feel pretty good about our situation. I think optimism should be really, really high. It's like, wait, do we kind of have guys that know what they're doing right now? Because that's what it feels like. That's a huge economic swing. Think how much money the Falcons are paying Cousins these next couple of years. Now, maybe if Darnold throws 40 touchdowns and you guys win 12, 13 games, what are you going to do? Let him walk? So you'd have to pay him, but he's a more dynamic player than Cousins. Now, Cousins has been doing it at a longer, higher level for longer. It seems like kickers have been or had a surprisingly good start to the year. It's clear that kickers are stronger and more accurate than ever. Example, Brandon Aubrey made a 65-yard field goal look like a chip shot, and nobody was surprised. Is it possible in the next 3 to 5 years, the NFL makes the goalposts closer together? I saw Jake Moody miss a 50-yard field goal. I think sometimes we overreact to this. Obviously, training and strength training is probably never been better for specific things. I think it's fair to say these kickers are probably stronger than they have been in years past. The isolated training, maybe it's different. I mean, I don't pretend to be some kicking expert, but I've read some headlines. I know some blog posts about we need to put the goalposts and make the posts a smaller distance. It's like, let's just pump the brakes. Why? If a guy can kick 65-yard field goal, the guy can kick 65-yard field goal. What's wrong with that? I have no problem with it. I'm not one of those people that say we need to change. We're 3 weeks in, too. Coming from a Bears fan, did the team screw up in hiring Shane Waldron over Clint Kubiak? I saw some of Seattle fans actually happy with the offense this year compared to last season. Waldron looks to be the problem, and I think he's going to get Eberflus fired how bad the offense looks. Do you think the Bears have a chance at landing Ben Johnson? If I'm a Bears fan, and let's face it, I mean, as of the day, you'd say Eberflus is a dead man walking. I don't think we can afford to risk hiring one of these coordinators. Because what if they are over their head? I think the guy I would hire would be Mike Vrabel. Get Mike Vrabel and have him hire an good offensive coordinator. Now you go, John, that stands for everything that you're against. I think you're so invested into Caleb Williams that if you hire Slowick or you hire Clint Kubiak, and if they are not a good quote unquote head coach, that's very, very risky. Now it's easy. It's like, well, we got the next Kyle or McVay or Andy Reid. What if you got the litany of guys that have failed? I would try to hit a double. I think sometimes the Bears and just teams in general, when they're in a situation like that, like you guys have a lot of good players. Let's just get the train on the tracks. Because I think the variance on a Slowick or a Kubiak or a Ben Johnson, who has been scared to become a head coach, could be a home run. But it could be a fucking disaster. I mean, a disaster. Or if I tell you, Mike Vrabel is your next head coach, is it safe to say you're going to be pretty good over the next 2 or 3 years? And then if in 3 years you're like, this isn't good enough, that's a good problem to have. But to me, in your situation with Caleb, who to me needs to be corralled and just kind of like settled down a little bit, I think Vrabel's a safe option. If I'm one of these teams with just nothing going for me, yeah, whatever. You guys have something going for you. The other thing is you need your division is well coached. LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell, Dan Campbell. Like it's these guys are going to be there for a while. So if you get it wrong with the coordinator spot, that's pretty risky. And I get like, well, what if Vrabel's offensive coordinator does a good job, he leaves? I understand that, but I don't know. I get very nervous with the Slowicks and the Kubiaks and those type guys. Both of them, I mean, Kubiak's called plays for 3 games. 3 games. 1 game against Vic Fangio, he got punked. Flores just took Bobby Slowick to the woodshed. He's called games for 17 games, a playoff game, 18, 21 games in his life. 21 games. I think you guys need experience. I mean, I'm serious. Just get an experienced guy who just knows what he's doing. We're not trying to win the Super Bowl. We're just trying to go to the playoffs like back-to-back years. What we're seeing, it's early in the season, but we're seeing struggles from this year's rookie quarterback class and a lot of success from previous written-off quarterbacks. Darnold, Baker, Carr, Malik Willis, and now even Andy Dalton. Do you think the league will start to trend back to the days of giving their rookie quarterbacks time to develop? I think it's tough because I'm recording this part before Washington plays. Like, what are they supposed to do? Let Jaden sit behind Marcus Mariota? I think Mariota's even hurt right now. What were the Bears going to sign, like Gardner Minshew to start over Caleb? Like, I'm pro playing guys. I think it depends who you are. And also depends on the situation of the team. We've seen guys, I mean, Peyton Manning started right away. Started immediately in 1998. You know, Matt Stafford started immediately in 2007. So quarterbacks, and you just take your lumps and you figure it out. Now, you could argue that breaks some guys. And some of the guys have to go other places to resurrect their career. Jared Goff started immediately. I mean, Brock Purdy got to start as a rookie. He was a 7th-round pick. Dak Prescott, immediate starter. I'm a huge believer in there is no correct path for anything in life. My path is different than your path. Manning's path is different than Brady's path, is different than Aaron Rodgers' path. So that there's no guaranteed path to success. Everyone's different. Now, some paths are bad for that individual person and can derail their career. But the best part about the NFL, especially when you're a high pick, you're going to get several chances. Diana Rossini just said that if they were willing to trade him, there'd be 4 or 5 teams willing to trade for him right now, which I think is a little crazy being Bryce Young, given how much money he makes. Even giving up a 7th-round pick based on what we've seen. If Bryce Young had been a 6th-round pick and had been the Panther starter the last 2 years, nobody would trade for him. But he's the number 1 pick and he has the pedigree. So when you get drafted high and have the quote-unquote pedigree, it's why teams are going to be interested in Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, in Bryce Young, no matter how bad you look. It's the one big disadvantage you get when you're a later round pick and you struggle. People think you can't play. Where when you're drafted high and you struggle, people think, oh, it's the situation. It's the team. It's the coach. So I don't really have a direct answer there beside, I don't know. Monday Morning Pod segment. You could do a section on the show each Monday and call it Monday Morning Mulligan. And that would be a team that played poorly on the last Sunday of football, but it doesn't change your opinion on that player or team. It just deem it a bad game, and you're willing to give them a pass on their performance. I like that guy. It's not a bad idea. As a Jags fan and Doug Pederson doubter, do you think it's possible the Jags move off Doug if they start 0-4? I feel like Doug's inability to move off Press Taylor has tied himself to Press. And if you want one gone, you must fire the other. He does have a weird loyalty to Press Taylor. I'm obviously recording this part before the Monday night game. I think that place could get really weird really fast. That if they don't make the playoffs, I'd be a little shocked if he got fired early in the season because I'd have to look at their coaching staff, but who would they implement? But I do think he's coaching this year for his job. And I do think anything less than being in the playoffs come the second week in January, he will be fired. And I think Trent Baalke will be fired. And that place will have an all full court press of Bill Belichick. That would be my guess. A lot of people are sending me the memes and the pictures of Arthur Blank, who put himself in his own Hall of Fame and Ring of Honor. Listen, I would say pretty high percentage chance I will never be as rich as Arthur Blank / own an NFL team. So maybe that warps your opinion of yourself, but I can't imagine being that rich, that successful, and needing to put my name in the Ring of Honor. I mean, bro, what are you? that it's just the jokes write themselves. Nobody. I've listened to a couple podcasts today on a million text chains about it. No, how can anyone take that seriously? Can you imagine some of the text chains of employees for the Atlanta Falcons? Are we really? Can you imagine the guy that had to, I don't know if they engrave it or they put, big letters up there. I honestly wasn't really paying attention at halftime. I was eating dinner. So I don't know if they showed it on TV, but I guess it feels like a lot of people don't necessarily engrave it into the concrete. They almost, kind of put letters on top. Why would you do that? Also, what have you done? Build a stadium? Okay, cool. I struggle understanding why more teams don't take the approach of starting a veteran quarterback while letting their rookie quarterback develop. As a former Panthers fan, seeing how the Bryce Young situation is played out, my question is, why aren't more teams interested in having veteran guys, Darnold, Flacco, Jameis, Dalton, Tyrod, even compete for the starting job while letting the rookie develop? You and others, rightfully so, mocked Atlanta for taking Penix while acquiring Cousins, but seeing most of the rookie performances, I don't know anymore. Contracts aside, is there a reason teams are more willing to throw underdeveloped rookies into the fire instead of letting a Sam Darnold, Andy Dalton, or Jacoby Brissett, or any other veteran compete to be the immediate starter? What's an economic problem? Because the value in having a rookie quarterback is their contract. So if I waste 2 or 3 years while the guy sits and we aren't competing to win the Super Bowl, I have just wasted his greatest asset. The Packers with Jordan Love. Who cares? Their guy was winning MVPs and they were competing to win the Super Bowl. But in other situations, when a guy sits and you don't win big, it's a waste. The Chiefs won the division, hosted a playoff game, lost to the Titans, and immediately got rid of Alex for Patrick because his value with the contract was important. They can utilize that money around him. So I think that's a huge element that, one, you know right away or within a short period of time, and then you can utilize that contract to your benefit if the guy's just a solid player, let alone a star. That's a huge reason. It all comes back, like this is a business, to the money. And paying a guy $5, $6, $7 million, what was a huge benefit to the Houston Texans this offseason? They have a lot of firepower to spend because their quarterback doesn't make much money. That one day CJ will make $50, $60 million a year. Right now he's making like 5, 6, 7, whatever his, the bonus gets spread out over 4 years. But you know what I mean? That is the huge advantage to find out. And I also think we have recent examples of a lot of guys having immediate success. So you go, why are we waiting? Because most of the time, if you're a team that drafts a guy really high and you start a Dalton, start a Flacco, your team's not going to be that good. I mean, Dalton, I know, looked excellent yesterday, but if they started him for 17 games, realistically, they're not going to look like that most of the time. I just think it gets back to economics. And I think it gets back to having that rookie contract and using it to your advantage to sign other players and make moves to build up your team. Because one day, if you do hit on that player, you got to pay him a lot of money. And if you don't, you want to know quickly so you can move off and look for a new guy. Like the clock is ticking. This isn't baseball where you get to sit a guy in the minors and until he comes up to the big leagues, his contract doesn't start. It's not the way it works. I mean, the moment the guy is drafted, year one, baby.